interesting. Now, Mark, let's come back to the UK then. And of course, the last major pandemic preparedness exercise that Britain held was Exercise Cygnus, which happened amazingly just prior to the COVID situation. We've got a new one coming up very soon.
Indeed. I kind of got my pants caught on a nail on this one, guys. I stumbled across it as I keep an eye on the international health regulations and things like that. It's an ongoing thing, of course. And it turns out it's called Exercise Pegasus, set for this coming autumn, the fall, in the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And I have the main slides from NHS England. It might look a little excessive text-wise, but I wanted to get the main part of this on the record. People can freeze the slides to read all of it if they'd like, because this is more or less the initial report by UK Column on Exercise Pegasus. But on this one, Pandemic Response Plan, of these first two, the second one is more important. Work is underway on developing a pandemic response plan, which will set out national roles and responsibilities and how the health and social care system will respond to a pandemic occurring now for different routes of transmission. The first of these focuses on response to a respiratory airborne pandemic, something that they could claim is more transmissible, things like that. Now, moving on and just kind of cherry picking this part, these parts, the main part of the NHS England statement on this. Number 3 is also, that's their emphasis, by the way, not mine. Exercise Pegasus is a tier 1 exercise defined as a national level exercise involving ministerial participation and cabinet office briefing rooms activation. And here's the key part: when, and will take place between September and November of this year. Its key purpose is to simulate a realistic pandemic scenario, and it's the first of its kind in nearly a decade, they're saying. And you mentioned Cygnus, Mike. There was also on our side of the pond, Event 201 in New York City in October of 2019, a drill that bared a very close resemblance, or you might say the pandemic that came in early 2020 very closely resembled many elements of that drill, Event 201 in New York. Moving on from there, these are just some other components of the NHS England statement, again, that constitute the core of this. People can freeze these and read about this later. I'll read number 6. Executive participation is set to include National Director for UEC and Operations, Chief Medical Officer, selected National Clinical Directors, Chief Nursing Officer, regional directors with support from the National Program Director for Urgent and Emergency Care, and National Director for NHS Resilience, the favorite globalist word there, resilience. This will take place across 3 two-day phases in September and October. Again, a little more of a hint as to the timing and how this will be structured. Now, another important thing, and I'll just cherry pick this again, is from NHS England. They also had an appendix number 1, the core objectives. One of them is exercise decision-making processes for measures to contain, control, or mitigate the impact of a pandemic, including how relevant priority lessons from previous civil emergency exercises and outbreaks have been embedded. And there's other miscellaneous things. Some of it is quite bureaucratic. I call it bureaucratese. It's kind of a language like globalese. But in the second set of the outcomes, or the assumed outcomes, the middle one is important. I marked it with an arrow and in red. Test the strategic response, of course, they have to do this, to disinformation and misinformation. They have to control the narrative, particularly if they want to look at the possibility, if they really have a so-called real pandemic, would there be a lockdown worse than the first one? They would really have to be warding off the misinfo and disinfo so they can control the narrative if they want to do that in the event this drill were to go real. And we've seen drills going real, even going back to 9/11 in the United States. But we have a video. I came to identify this MP member, a Labor member, as Matt Western, as in country and Western, Matt Western. And he represents Leamington and Warwick in the UK. And he had a little something to say about exercise Pegasus, among some other miscellaneous things, but it's not a long video, so let's roll that.
The action plan brings together a range of policies. We have already set out our proposals to increase defence spending. We are earmarking £4.2 billion of funding for new flood defences, £370 million to secure the UK's telecom networks, opening a new resilience academy in North Yorkshire that will train 4,000 people every year from both private and public sectors. And later this year, we will have the largest ever national pandemic exercise that will test the UK's readiness for future pandemics. We are also developing a risk vulnerability map for public servants, applying one of the principal lessons of previous tragedies, which is that all too often it's the most vulnerable in our society who are hardest hit in the case of an emergency.
Interesting, kind of a mixed bag there that he shared, but he did mention it. It looks like it's going to be a big, unprecedented drill. One thing that UK residents might want to ask themselves now is, are they seeing anything yet in the BBC? Are they seeing anything yet in the British papers and the British press hinting at this? Or is it being kept relatively quiet? That would be quite instructive. I also found, talking to James Roguski, the noted IHR pandemic treaty researcher, and some of my own research, that as a related matter, for one thing, it appears that exercise Pegasus will have some reference to the international health regulations, because as those regulations are adopted, and that's supposed to be as of September 19th, so look at the timing, as those regulations are adopted, the Pegasus exercise would look at England's, the UK's preparedness with regard to what those regulations say. Yet at the same time, of all places, Israel, along with the United States and Italy, have, through official correspondence, they've signaled their intent to reject the amendments to the international health regulations. Now, an important point to keep in mind is you have the existing regulations, but then you have amendments, which are changes to the existing regulations. If you reject the amendments, what's left? Does the remaining body of regulations still constitute a threat to human freedom? That's an important question to ask. Just to give a little flavor of these countries that rejected the amendments, however, I have a statement or two from the Italian Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Edmondo Cirielli. Here's one of them. He said this: "It's absurd and dangerous to think that Italy should cede part of its healthcare sovereignty to an organization like the WHO. And I emphasize this: the Meloni government rightly rejected the IHR." Notice that it says rejected the international health regulations, not just the amendments. That's an important distinction, and I'm hoping they're not overlooking that distinction. And then he says, which would have introduced binding measures from above without going through Parliament. And he said this, in addition: this is not cooperation. It's bureaucratic centralism in a healthcare context. Each nation's right to decide how to address a health emergency must be defended. He went on to say, this isn't narrow-minded sovereignism. That might be a new word, sovereignism. It's a responsibility of an independent state to its citizens. So this is the sum and substance of what's going on so far. Of course, I won't be the only one covering this. I'm sure you guys, Charles Mallet, maybe you, Patrick, you, Mike, will be looking at the Pegasus exercise, because it's going to require a lot of repetitive reporting, but I'll keep an eye on it too. So that should do it for now.
Thank you very much, Mark.